Okay, you fans of popular culture, especially American popular culture of the 20th century, right in front of us is what we have is the Capitol Records building, the house that Nat built. Okay, what I'm here for actually is this building right here, the El Capitan Theater, built in Spanish Baroque in 1927, January 24th, 1927 to be exact. This is Vine Avenue, a little bit north of Hollywood Boulevard. Now, one of the greatest events in television history, 60 million viewers on the evening of September 23rd, 1952, where Richard Milhouse Nixon, the Republican candidate for Dwight D. Eisenhower, the vice presidential nominee, this is where he did the famous fun speech, otherwise known as the checker speech. It was a half hour, and it was broadcasted from right here at the El Capitan Theater. Now, a lot of people think it was at the El Capitan Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, but that was actually the Paramount movie theater back in those days, so a lot of people get it mixed up. Now, this place right here, this is where they filmed the Hollywood Palace from 1964 to 1970. Now, there's another famous event in musical history of the 20th century. On June 6th, 1964, this is where the Rolling Stones were first seen on national television. This is the first time the United States had ever seen the young, fledgling Rolling Stones. They sang Buddy Holly's Not Fade Away and Willie Dixon's I Just Want to Make Love to You. They were introduced by Dean Martin. They said that he really pissed them off. Well, he did make a lot of jokes about their long hair. And Keith Richards, he was so inflamed. They were fuming. They were actually bordering on insults. But this is where the United States youth of the incipient 60s generation, this is where they first they caught a glimpse of that fantastic group from England, the Rolling Stones. Okay, now, this fun speech that Richard Nixon did in 1952, he did it because the press were really chastising him, really attacking him for taking $18,000 from, they were actually campaign contributions, but they were saying that he was corrupt, he was dishonest. Was this the kind of man that you wanted to have run the nation, run the country, a heartbeat away from the presidency? It was a half-hour speech, and it was, like I said, unprecedented. Nobody had ever tuned in that many people, because they were so concerned. That was right in the middle, smack dab in the middle of the Korean War, where we lost 50,000 soldiers. So of course they were concerned who was going to end up being president, if not the vice president. Like I said, a heartbeat away. Okay, he was very stressed. The scandal started Thursday, the week before, and then he was really pushed up against the wall to explain himself. He didn't have to go on national television, but his campaign manager, Murray Chotiner, advised them, we got to win the president, we got to win the vice presidency, because you're the man of the hour. You're one day you're gonna be the president. So you got to do this. So Nixon said, okay, I'll do it, and but I won't have an audience. I won't allow an audience in there. And of the set that you see behind him, it's what they call a GI bedroom den with desk and books. So that's the kind of set they set him up with. And Eisenhower was equivocating. He couldn't make up his mind. In fact, he was telling through his aides to tell Richard Nixon to bow out, to quit the ticket. But then the problem was, they said if Dick Nixon would have quit, Dwight D. Eisenhower wouldn't have won. And then he was concerned, but what if he stays on the ticket and we still don't win? So there was quite a quandary. So okay, this is where it happened, and we're right in the middle of what once was the center of gravity of old Hollywood. And there was a few lines that are very, very memorable from that speech, and one of them I love when he said, Pat doesn't have a neat coat, but she does have a respectable Republican cloth coat. And heck, I always tell her that she'd look good in anything. And then there was another fantastic, memorable line when he said, God must have loved the common people. He made so many of them. Great, great, great lines. He wrote it himself, unscripted. He just read from notes, but he didn't write any like lines or anything. He just put little reminders, little mnemonic notes, and but those lines. And there was another famous thing that he said. He said, this is, in the history of American politics, unprecedented. And I am going to, at this time, to give to this television and radio audience a complete financial history. Everything I've earned, everything I've spent, everything I owe, and I want you to know the facts. Wow. And okay, one more line. I loved what he said. He goes, let me say this. I don't believe that I ought to quit, because I'm not a quitter. And incidentally, Pat's not a quitter after all. Her name was Patricia Ryan, and she was born on St. Patrick's Day. And you know, the Irish never quit. So he was retained on the ticket. He asked the people of the United States to send telegrams to the Republican National Committee, and it was unprecedented. Dwight D. Eisenhower, he had no choice but to remain on the ticket. And one thing he did tell the general when he was equivocating, he couldn't say yay or nay to keep him on the ticket, and he called up the general and he told him, General, there comes a time in matters like this when you've either got to shit or get off the pot. Can you imagine telling Eisenhower that? The Supreme Commander of the American Expeditionary Forces to hit Fortress Europe. And then of course Eisenhower, he replied that it might take 3 or 4 days to gauge public reaction. But he had no choice. The country loved Dick Nixon, and you all know the rest of history. These great men, self-deprecating men, never walked around validating themselves, regular straight shooters. And Let's go across here. And one more couple of factoids. This is where Ralph Edwards' "This Is Your Life" was broadcast from 1948 to 1961. In fact, behind us at the Knickerbocker Hotel is where Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy were staying when he surprised them. He walked to the back and into the back entrance of the Knickerbocker, and you can see that on YouTube. And this is where, if you were a fan of the King family in the 1960s, this is where they broadcasted their TV show. I love their specials, the King family. I never missed them. And if you know anything about them, Tina Cole, one of the nieces, she was a girl that married Robbie and my three sons, the little blonde. I always loved Tina Cole. I love that show. And there was a hamburger stand right here when I came to Hollywood in 1964, and I remember sitting right here and looking up at the Capitol building, and it was just a different era. All the classiness, all the men were in suits at that time. That was 1964. All the women had the beehives. It was such a great, fantastic era. I wish I could go in a time machine and live from 1961 to 1968 continually. Okay, you fans, thank you for watching. We're at 1735 Vine Avenue. And Dick, Nixon, wherever you're at, good night, sweet prince.